Yeah. Okay.
Hello, Mr. Tilly.
How's it, Donovan?
Well, thanks, and you, brother?
Good.
Hey.
Good.
We're just waiting for Khaya to start
The
his
host
video.
has asked you to start my video. Okay, there we go.
117 days in, and you're still questioning this thing. Start video, mute, Khaya.
No.
No.
No, I was looking at the request. I didn't know that you could request it.
How's it, Khaya?
No, I'm good, man. How you guys doing?
All good.
Very good. Surviving, man. We're still here.
Still
here.
Yes,
Nice.
it's interesting times we're all living in. Jeez,
it is interesting.
Both of you look like you've got professional lighting.
Hey?
Both of you look like you've got professional lighting.
Hey, man, this is the 4th episode. We had to do something to make sure we've had practice.
Is my head shining, Khaya? Is that why you say that?
No, it's good.
I like the beard, Khaya.
Yeah, it's laziness, to be honest.
But you don't have to say that to anyone. Just go like, yeah, no, it's intentional.
Anyway.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're about ready to kick off now. Just for everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. This is the 4th episode of Final Approval, brought to you by the Luries and, of course, Brand South Africa. Very excited about this one. We've got somebody who has made a lot of noise in the ad industry, which we will unpack quite a bit. This is predominantly a Q&A session, so we really do encourage you guys to interact as much as possible. At the bottom of your screen, you'll notice there's a Q&A tab, and we actually prefer you to use that instead of the chat box. So I'll introduce Khaya, we'll chat for a little bit, but you can start sending your questions through as much as possible, and that's how we'll lead the conversation. But yeah, for now, I think I'm just going to kick it off and just say thank you very much for joining us, my brother. Oh, shout out to Ahmed Tilly, of course. I see him sitting there waiting for his special introduction every week. Shout out to Ahmed Tilly for joining me. You can throw some questions over to Ahmed or myself if you want to, but this is about the man with the great beard and the poor boy hat over there. You'd be a great cast member in Peaky Blinders, actually.
You know what? That's very true. That is very, very true. But I don't know if I've got that. I look like I've got the dangerous edge. You know, I need to have the dangerous edge to be part of that.
Just stop smiling, Khaya. Just stop smiling.
No, but actually, that, you know what? Maybe that's how it would make me more dangerous. That I look like I'm not going to do anything because I'm smiling. You know?
That's what I'm saying.
And then, like, you know, hey, man. And then, it's tickets.
All right, so here we go. We've got about an hour for this conversation. We're going to kick it off, and we'll see how much we can get in. If we can't answer all of your questions, we are very sorry. We know a lot of them start coming through as the conversation builds. But if you don't mind, Ahmed, I'm just gonna get straight into it, man.
Jump right in.
And I'll just start with Khaya and say how you doing, how you surviving the lockdown. You obviously. I think your job title and what you're doing right now must be really, really tough in times like this, really trying to push and get people to know about the brand that you're working on, obviously, which in my opinion is still quite new based on what it is.
Very new.
So,
yeah.
So this must be a very tough time for you.
No, it's well, in a strange way, I mean, the business is growing, which is almost like, you almost feel quite weird to say that, like, you're growing when the economy is doing so, badly, and a lot of people are being affected and are impacted. So I think for me, there's no sound on my side. Or whose side?
No sound.
Somebody says there's no sound. That's
bizarre. I can hear everybody. I think it's probably the person who is. It's probably them. Maybe their volume is down.
Is everybody else experiencing this? So can everybody else hear us? Just send a thumbs up or whatever it is in the chat box. That's quite strange.
Yeah. Oh, they can hear us, so
Oh,
it's
so
fine.
there is sound. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Mm.
Elliot, it might be muted on your side or something, or your
Yeah,
machine has been
probably.
muted. All right. Cool.
Yeah,
Sorry, brother. Sorry
probably.
to interrupt.
Sorry. Then, you know, it's so funny. Like I'm trying to. I wanted to open the thing. I had my window open, but there are people drilling outside, so that's a little bit
Ah,
noisy. Um, so as I was saying, it's quite tricky, you know, to actually say that, you know, we're growing nicely, we're seeing great growth, and the reason for that is obviously the offering that we have, and it's exactly what people need because everyone's working from home and they need data and affordable data. So we have been experiencing growth, and I suppose in the midst of like a terrible situation, and we just try to make people's lives a little bit easier, you know, working from home by just, you know, being able to supply them with affordable data. So in those respects, it hasn't been that bad, but what's been great is how I think how innovative the business has been in this time, and how people have, you know, thought of new ways of doing things
yes.
during the pandemic, and not to allow the moment to kind of swallow us in, but to try and make the most of the moment, and while trying to make people's lives a little bit easier at the same time.
Excellent. Ahmed, if you don't mind, you know, to really kick off this conversation, then I want to start, you know, with this one where, you know, I've seen you do a talk once, Khaya, that really blew me away. It was so honest, you know, it was so wonderfully you. And the one thing I took out of that talk was, in terms of creativity, you say that you've basically just told your story. That's the one thing that's carried you through everything, which I really, really love. You know, I try and do that as much as I can. But I want to start from the beginning very quickly. If you can summarize this, how does a young man from Etukwini, close to Mount Aleph in the Eastern Cape, decide to go into advertising?
You know, like the funny thing is he doesn't.
Okay.
Because, and you know, he doesn't make that decision because I think in the time and era where I grew up, like in this village in the Eastern Cape, it's like it's weird because it's in the Eastern Cape. It's like a 7 hour drive, 7 to 8 hour drive to Joburg, and but every like the men when I was growing up there, like were that go and work in the mines in Johannesburg. So, and that was like the thing that you were supposed to do. Go, and once you've grown up, you're going to go and work in the mines in Johannesburg. And that's what I thought, you know, I'll grow up to be at some point. Um, but, and then having the privilege of like, of a good education and being sent to good schools, you know, by my mother. And also because I always want to acknowledge the privilege that I had. And it's quite weird in in the sense that even though, like, you know, I was part of the oppressed, I still had some privileges that I have, and also over and above that, like also the privilege of being a man, and I think we've got to acknowledge that. And over and above being the privilege of being male, there are parts of you that are also a bit of an oppressor, if you will. That is a bit hard, you know, to swallow and acknowledge and admit. But so having gone to these schools, there was what was it? If you didn't do maths or accounting, what was that subject? Business economics.
Yes.
Okay. So that's what I did. And during one of the subjects, they had a module on marketing. And then I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I'd never heard of it. I didn't know what it was. And I was very curious about it. And I just saw how interested I was in it by how much effort I'd put in it and studying and making sure that I got good marks when we're having tests. And then one day we had a registrar from the AAA, and she came to talk about, you know, about advertising. And then she showed us, as in standard 8, and she showed us like these different ads that people were doing, like young people. And I was like, oh, wow, this is interesting. These people are about like 3-4 years older than I am, and they've made such really cool things. This is so awesome. I'd love to do this. I think I, there was nothing in me that said I couldn't do it, or I just was very curious and I just felt compelled and attracted to it. So that's what made me get into advertising, and at a much later stage in my life, is because of what I saw that young people, and I never thought about the fact that there were no Black people that I knew, but what I thought about was like, wow, young people who are about 3 or 4 years older than me have done this, so that means I can also do it, and that's literally what attracted me to it.
So
Fantastic.
So I want to jump in, Khaya. So you got your exposure at that point at school, and then I think you went to Cape Town, right, to study?
Yes, I came to study in Cape Town.
Okay, and then you got into the industry, right? And then how did that, was that the same the way you perceived it when you were sitting at school, looking at all those ads and the young people that came up with the ads? Did you find a rude awakening, or was it exactly how you had anticipated?
It's weird because I didn't think anything, and that was weird. And the only thing that I knew about advertising in a way was generations. But I mean, generations.
That is so great. Wow. Absolutely nothing like any ad agency.
Archie Morocco has done more for the advertising industry than any person who's ever worked and lived in it.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But I think, I think when you're in college and you are studying, you almost have an understanding of the real world, because we have briefs, you have deadlines, and it's just hectic, the entire time. And your idea is that when you start getting into the work environment, it's going to be worse. And that, I imagine that's what I thought. It's going to be worse because it's what we have to do. But the challenge for me was that you had to buy all this expensive equipment to do your projects, and I didn't have the money, and I'd have to borrow the boards from people and equipment. It was not easy, and that's what made it made it extra hard. The fact that you have to come up with concepts and ideas, but then you have to execute them. If you don't have the money, then you're gonna get poor marks. And it like advertising was a truly rich person's kid profession. And for me, not having rich parents and going to study this profession, it really made me realize how much sometimes I felt guilty for starting it, because it was insanely expensive, and like multiple times more expensive than going to like Wits or UCT and colleges like that. And here I was going to this insanely expensive school. And when I was at college at the time, I think at the AAA, there must have been 4 Black people in the entire school. And can you just imagine how different, and not strange, but because even in school, because I'm that old, so in school, there were also very few Black people in the school. So I was kind of used to this thing of being one of the few Black people and living in this loneliness at the same time, that I think in a strange way that Mark Hyantine spoke about the other day, which you kind of just get used to, and it becomes part of your life.
That's an interesting point. I want to pick up on that. That's an interesting thing. Obviously, Makai and Tini's been talking about the loneliness that he felt in that setup. Khaya, have you felt more lonely in the advertising side, agency side, or on the client side?
Very interesting. That's a very, very good question. Whoever felt more, like in the advertising space, I felt
agency side, right?
Yes. When I was agency side as a creative. Initially, I think that when I worked, I don't know if I should mention agencies.
Name.
So when I was at Low Bull, I was a junior, and I felt frustrated because I felt like I had these ideas and they were just not being, produced. And then I ended up at Ogilvy. and again at Ogilvy, and produced his ideas, and everyone's, oh my god, the great, oh fantastic, and that would be it. And I'll never forget, I had an idea, a couple of scams, and this thing was not taken. It was not, and I remember showing it to a group head of mine, and the idea somehow vanished and disappeared. A few months later, this was the idea that this group head suddenly had, for the same client, and it was theirs. And I was like, how is this possible? But you keep quiet because you're like, okay, I'm going to earn my stripes. And it was a little bit lonely, but I tried to make friends, but people were just friends with you, just like in passing, but there was no real, and I felt like there was no mentorship, that there was no one really trying to help me grow, and that's what I felt I needed. And the first time in my life where I felt that my ideas were listened to and I was valued was when I went to the Jupiter Drawing Room, where you were at the Jupiter Drawing Room, Cape Town. And what was quite fast, I'll never forget being in my first meeting and it was pretty hectic because Spike, you remember Spike, because I used to work with Ahmed. The funny thing is, like, I used to work with Ahmed and Donovan actually Donovan made the cover of my book. Actually, this is his idea. He did that.
Donovan.
So like, I've got a great relationship with both of you, which is fantastic. And I remember going to the Jupiter Drawing Room because Graham Lang, apparently, I remember Spike telling me this story, that Graham Lang was talking about this great, talented guy that is going to come here. He's so amazing. He's this. So Spike is telling me this story, and I was like, what? No way, please. Guys, this agency at the time, I think it was one of one of the top 3 most creative agencies in the world. And I'm going there as this junior, and this guy who's won so many awards is talking me up. And I was like, I'm being set up for failure because I'll get there and everyone's going to have this high expectation. And I was so terrified of going, to the agency. So I get to the agency and there's a brainstorm, a big brainstorm. And I'm sitting down and I'm not saying anything. And I'm like, I can't, because I had this expectation, right? And then I whispered like something. It was a music like brainstorm, and I whispered something to Spike, and Spike like, that's so funny, haha. And I was like, no. And then Spike says, no, say it. I said, no, I can't say it. It's terrible. No, it's a bad idea. No, come on, say it. And then Graham's like, no, say it. What is it? I was like, no, it's a bad idea. No, it's nothing. And then Spike says, okay, I'll say it. And then Spike says the idea, and then everybody kind of laughs at this idea, and it's like, okay, fantastic. That's the idea that it was going to go. And now I'm thinking, oh my God. And I'm like, oh my God, I have created this. I get this mistake, this fluke. Now it's going to seem, I'm going to seem like it's real. Oh my God, I cannot live up to this. And then the next day, I think it was, I don't know, the Foshini thing, brainstorm, one of those, I don't know what it was, another brainstorm. And again, the idea that I come up with is the one that they choose. And it's like, no, I don't need this in my life.
I sense a little imposter syndrome there.
But from what was strange for me was the fact that for the first time, my ideas had merit. And I'd never experienced that before. Never. And I think that's, yes, they were heard. And I think that's why that created this also imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I'm not used to it. It's new. Yeah.
Yeah. But can I just jump in there though quickly?
Yeah, sure.
What is it about those ideas do you think that made everybody stop and go, yeah, that's the one? What is it that nobody else was saying in that room? And going back to how we originally set this up, did you just go, what if we just do it like this? Because that's where you're from and this is how you understand this, and you weren't trying to complicate it.
Well, it was a simple, because I don't remember the second idea, but I do remember that other one. There was, the musical brief was about It was about Afrikaans music. And at the time there was the What Makes You Black
Metro.
Metro FM.
Metro FM, yeah.
And then I was like, what if we make it like What Makes You
I remember
Afrikaans,
that.
you know?
Yeah, I remember that.
You know? And I was like, so we do it, but like it's an entire spoof based on, you know, what makes you black, right? But I don't think, I think it never actually happened because Musica was very stingy budgets. They liked it, but you know, we ended up, I think, going with the freaking print ad as opposed to, they said you can make a TV ad, come up with, but then they end up with a print ad anyway. But I think maybe it was just being simple. You're right, like not complicating ideas, because the most successful ideas are the simplest, not the most complicated.
I have to jump in there, Khaya. It's that story. I actually remember the idea. What makes you Afrikaans? Just a point, Khaya, and interestingly, Spike a few years later did the same thing on Virgin Money at Black River, and it was like
that was hilarious.
That What Makes You Afrikaans was a joke you told Spike, and on Virgin Money they did the same thing. They were just having fun, telling each other what is just silly and funny. And it turned out to be an amazing campaign. And I think the point I'm making is, Kai, you do that really well. You just find things that are really funny to you and you share them. And more often than not, those things are funny to millions of people out there. And what you said was true. It's like sometimes you don't have to overcook it.
But because you know what you said about Virgin Money. So what Ahmed is said about Virgin Money, because we had been awarded the Virgin Money business, and I think you and Spike came up with the Blingola TV ad. So it was like, you know, it was hilarious, just so funny. And then Spike and I we had to come up with these radio ideas, and we're sitting outside, and then we're like, yeah, but because Blingola is a country, right? It's a country. So what if, you know, Blingola had its own language? Right? And then you have this idea, but what if the ads were in Blingolan, right? But it's just gibberish. And then we just started chatting and we were cracking up and laughing. And I remember Ahmed walking outside. He comes outside and sees us laughing. And he says, so what is it? What it got? It's like, no. And we both like, because we're thinking it's so stupid. There's no way this thing is like, and then Ahmed is, because come on, what is it? It's like, no, it's really stupid. And I think it's actually so important as a young creative to have someone to get you to tell them the ideas that you think are really stupid, so that they give you the courage to make you realize that there is no stupid idea, because there might be something great in what you think is stupid, because you don't recognize it as great. You know, a more seasoned and experienced person will recognize that greatness. And that is important, that you have someone who is behind the corner. And I think for us, you know, Ahmed was that person who saw that. And so we told him the idea, and he thought it was hysterical and was so funny. And then he said, let's write the ads. And I was like, is Ahmed crazy? Because I know he doesn't drink, so he's not drunk. So
you never know what's inside the bottle.
So and then he made us present the idea to the client, and we were convinced we were going to be fired because it was so stupid. And then we presented. The client loved the idea, and it did very well.
That was amazing. Khaya, let's get a question in there, because we want people to ask questions. There's an NL Mklongu who says, Khaya, having the experience of being a creative prior to being a client, how do you assist smaller agencies to get a foot in the door in this very small industry?
How do you assist smaller agencies? Do one of the strangest things that I've always said to people, and it sounds like, and I always feel guilty for saying this, and I always feel like I'm saying the wrong thing. And I use the example of white agencies that made it big. When I think of the Jupiter Drawing Room, right, before they actually were a big and recognized agency, they'd been in this, I think it took something like 15 years before they got any recognition and getting getting proper size clients and briefs and all of those things and big budgets. And if I'm not mistaken, Joe Public, it took them like up 12 years, 10, 12 years. And I think the clients need to see a track record. And this is a weird thing. It's like they want to see a track record, you proving yourself over a period of time. Because I mean, the agencies that had a track record were like your Ogilvy's and your Lindsay Smithers and those big agencies. And everybody who wanted to do anything would go to those agencies. And then because what happens with creating work is that there's a lot of back-end stuff that needs to happen in order for it to work. So there's a accounts department, there is the booking of the models, the booking of the agency, booking media, and making sure everything happens seamlessly. And often what happens, even if like an agency has a great idea but is unable to execute it as well because some of these things in the back end break down, the trust in the creativity and ability of the agency breaks down. And then the client is disappointed. And then the client's like, okay, you know what? Let me not go and deal with these guys again. Because why? So you've got to think back, because why does a client become this way? It's because the client is thinking that I've spent 5 million rand on this and I'm going to be in trouble because we did not produce an optimal product because of the small mistakes, even though the idea itself was great. And then the idea comes out being average because there were these small things in the background that did not happen smoothly and well. And I think a small agency, in order for you to be able to get your foot in the door properly, is to smooth out that process. Make sure that process is smooth and make sure that the client is comfortable and they can trust you. And if they feel they can trust you because of all those things, after they've given you this small job and you prove them another job and you prove yourself, then I think it's going to be a lot easier for you to gain that trust from the client. And I mean, I've tried, I've in my career, I have given, small, independent agencies every now and then, like, small opportunities to see what is possible. But then at the same time, if I'm like working on Coca-Cola, where it's a big client, where there are global relationships. So like where everybody has to, where the mandate is everybody has to use, where everybody says everybody has to use a particular WPP agency. Yeah. Now if you're a small agency, you're not a WPP agency.
Yeah.
And then it becomes very difficult then to kind of try and create relationships with small agencies, unless I'm working on a local product. Like if it's like a Stony, for example, that's a Stony because, or a power play, for example, it's like, well, the global doesn't really care about that because it's a small brand. And then you can try smaller agencies with those little brands. So you kind of have those kind of little tricks that you can pull when you're working with a very big client.
Great answer. I'm going to jump straight into the next question over here. Ukanyi Mbumlwana says or asks, you spoke of mentorship and the importance of young creators having someone to tell all their bad ideas to. Would you say that you're an active mentor to young creatives in the industry, Khaya?
No, I would not say, but I would say that I am a mentor when the creatives come to present to me.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not going to go and mentor someone, out there, someone I don't know. I remember, for example, when in Khabi and Makondi presented, Sherlock Coke, the Bobby ad, because I came up with the ad. It was incredible. And I felt so personal about that idea that I made it my personal project to make sure that it succeeded. Because one, it was these two young Black girls who had come up with this great idea. And like, if I tell you that it was dead in the water, it was dead on arrival, it was dead on arrival, because I've told this story many times because of, there was a dog in the ad. And we had such like empirical evidence that animals for Black people don't work. it is empirical evidence. And it was very clear because I'd asked Millward Brown to look at the past 10 years in advertising to see what succeeds, what doesn't succeed, what works and what doesn't, and why what works. And then the animals, I promise you when I say this, animals were right at the bottom in ads for Black people. Right at the bottom. The ads with animals just did not work. And then I remember trying to fight for this idea, trying to understand why I thought it would work. And I looked at all these other ads that didn't work. And then I said, I'll tell you why these other ads didn't work. It's because all these other ads, the animals, so if you look just at the numbers, purely at the numbers, and not try to understand the rationale and the reason something doesn't work, then you will just look at the numbers and throw great ideas away because you've been applied your mind. And I said the reason, if you look at all these other ads, because these animals were treated like human beings. So they were sleeping in your bed, they were like licking your face and doing all those things. And I was like, the difference with this dog is that it's a dog that's walking outside. It is outside. And that's what dogs do in the township and in the villages. They are outside. And it's doing what a normal dog would do, except for this one can read, and but that was because it's looking for its name. And I remember making this case, and what was great was that my marketing director, Sharon Keith, was like, okay, so do you believe this is gonna work? And I was like, yes. And I was like, at the same time, I was like, oh my God. And then she said, okay. And they said, okay. She said, because I also love it and I think it's great. So we're going to trust you. And that was the scariest moment of my life, where I literally said, okay, this is going to work. And then being given that faith, that this is going to work. So I think in terms of mentorship was the fact that I protected this idea and that I loved. And it was also for me, I think the emotional fact that it was these two young Black girls coming from this massive agency, working on this big summer Coke job. And I really wanted them to succeed and do well. And so that for me was in my strange way, I'd say, of mentorship. And I think apart from that, maybe it was my brother, because my brother, he had, I'd introduced him to advertising and, so apart from that, no, that is the only way I mentor people. But I think it's through the actions that you take. I'll give you one last example. I'll never forget, we were going to shoot a Sprite ad, and I'm in the boardroom, and I'm the only client in this boardroom, and everybody's from agency and the production company. And it's like about 20 people, and it's myself as a client, and there's one other Black person in the room, and there's this young kid, and he's coming from the production company. And there is this thing that I'm disagreeing with, and I think that needs to be changed. And obviously everyone's debating me and disagreeing with me. And I know people are thinking, oh, stupid client. They won't be saying it to me. They'll be thinking inside. When they go outside, they'll say I'm a stupid and dumb client. I know all of this because I've been there. and so when I get outside, and eventually I say to the young guy's name is Zuko. And I say, Zuko, what? I noticed I'd been in 2 meetings with him and it never said a word. And that disturbed me. The fact that why does he never say anything as in these meetings? And so this is a story that he told me. And I don't remember. So he tells me the story, and he always tells me this story when he's drunk, and at a party. And it says, you asked me a question, and it said, Zuko, what do you think? And I was like, and then I answered, and I gave my perspective. And then, I agreed with the point that you were making. And I remember you articulated the point I was making better than I was articulating it. And from that day on, he said from that day on, they made sure that he was always in the room when I was there. And from then on, that they gave him more space and more breathing room and more space to talk, so that he's not just there taking notes, that he's got an opinion that people can respect. And I think small things like that are very, very important, so to recognize that young person in the room that no one is recognizing as someone who has, you know, a brain to think and or to contribute. I don't know if it's mentorship. I don't know if it's mentorship, but yeah.
But I mean, I just want to react to that. I mean, I think it's amazing because people need guidance. Sometimes it comes through actions, but like you are an important person in South Africa in the media. You have thousands of followers, and like the more conversations of exactly the story you're relating, we wish you do more of it, because I think people are reaching out, and I think to respond to Kanye's question, it's like an appeal, is that please do more of it, because people listen to you, and people want you, and I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm just inviting you to do more of it, because I think it's really critical right now that you know we try and help as much as we can, and you've got such influence. So just saying that, hearing that story, you know, is such an empowering thing. And the thing is, it's also a form of mentorship, because it invites the rest of us who are in similar positions to be able to say certain things like, "What do you think?" 4 simple words. So anyway, just on that point, maybe we jump on to the next question.
And just before you go there, I see NL Mhlongo, who asked the first question, said you should tweet some tips, maybe. Not a bad idea. That's your world. But anyway, we'll think about it.
Okay. Well, yeah, it depends. It depends. I think that I would. I mean, if someone gives me like a subject or something, then I think that I would. I would. Cool. Yeah.
You want to go for the next question, Mr. Tilly?
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next question. Stembiso Kubeka says, with this industry being populated by templates to creating big ideas, how do you stand out from the norm of creating great ideas?
Actually, the thing is, you know, one of the greatest things that I learned when I was at Coca-Cola was that there was a thing, what did they call it? It was freedom within the framework. And I think that the best ideas actually come when you feel like you are only this box. This is the only thing that you have. And then what to do, because those constraints, and if you come up with a great idea within those constraints, it really shows your true creativity, your true capacity as a creator. And not to look at that constraint as a prison, that like there's nothing, you know, like I can't go beyond this. And for me, those are the people those are the creators I respect the most, who are able to see this little box and say, I know that this is a template, but this is what I'm going to do within this little box that I'm in. Because Coke has a global idea, and then you find, and then that's it. And did someone disappear? Oh. Okay, sorry, that's something strange.
We're still good.
Yeah.
100% more constraints. If you can work within those constraints, it shows how smart you are, as opposed to
freedom within a framework. That's what it's called. Freedom within when you actually see it as a freedom because you know what to work with, right? In fact, I think it's in many ways, I think it's easier because now I know exactly the things that I need to work with. And then it's just up to me what to add to it and to make something great from it. And that's how I see it.
Julian Watt, who was ECD at Network BBDO when I joined, gave me a bit of advice once and said, when you come and present ideas to me, I need you don't have to do it, but I need you to try and imagine putting those ideas down on a Post-it note. And if you can't sell that idea to me on a Post-it note and you have to explain it too much, you're probably not gonna get a thumbs up from me. And it's true what you're saying. I'm a big fan of constraints, you know, and jumping straight into where we are right now with lockdown. You know, I've been a part of a lot of conversations that you've tuned into, Khaya, where you know a lot of people have been saying, oh, you know, we can't come up with ideas now. I'm feeling so blocked, you know, I'm hitting this wall. And I look at it differently, you know, I think this is a great time to come up with ideas. You know, you've got basic resources to work with, and there's no excuse not to put out great work. You know, for me, I've always said that the internet and social media are a gift and a curse. You know, they're wonderful because you have access to all of this information. You can find anything you want out there. but it's also a curse because sometimes you go a little bit too deep. Now there's too much information thrown at you and it completely derails your thinking and your voice, more importantly, you know, because you start looking at all this great work. You go down a rabbit hole of supposed great work and you doubt everything that you know. You doubt everything that you've believed was great. And that just puts you in the darkest place. And once you're so deep in that hole, so hard to come out of it, to backtrack and go back to the basics and why you got into this in the first place and what excites you. I think for me to answer that question, that's how you come up with the great ideas. You know, what is the thing that excites you first? I think we developed this attitude, and I learned this from comedy, where you stop doing, so in comedy, if you stop writing things that make you laugh and you start writing things because you think this is going to make the audience laugh, you are going down a very, very bad place, you know, because at some point you're going to run out of steam, especially if you have a bad gig. Now you have no idea what makes them laugh, you know? I really think back to your whole thing about your story, you know, everything that you know, everything that you've grown up with, take those little bits that mean everything to you. And that, for me, that's how you come up with the most original ideas, because nobody's experienced what you have experienced, you know. Like your life, your timeline is original to you, but taking that and attaching it to something else, that's how you create the original idea, you know. And I mean, like, there's no right or wrong answer to this. You can go on forever talking about the subject, you know. You can't say to somebody that, this is how you come up with ideas. I really just think it's back to basics. What makes you happy first? Let's start there,
you know,
and then move.
And I think what you're saying to the whole thing about constraints, that for me is, in fact, I would almost see I almost feel like every creative should see themselves as a MacGyver of some kind, right? So because now, and that is what the constraint is. That. It's okay, how do I MacGyver myself out of this situation? And that's what you do. And that's what he did. And MacGyver found a way to get himself out. If they were he was back in the corner, and he finds a way out. He uses whatever is available to him, and finds a way out.
That's great.
And I think that is the best for me. Those are my favorite creatives.
I love that MacGyver analogy. That's actual creative problem solving. That's what he did. He had masking tape and
a straw to make a bomb.
And he got out. Khaya, I've got a double-pronged question for you, right? So obviously you've been on both sides, right? And I think that's one of the things that people find quite fascinating. So if there was one thing you as agency person could tell clients, you know how we can't tell clients, you spoke about the boardroom, you knew what they were thinking of the client in the room, but they wouldn't say it. If there was one you could say as an agency person to the client that agency people, for whatever reason, cannot be that honest about, what would you tell client? It's my phone.
This is, so if there's one thing I could say, if I was an agency person saying to client, but obviously being a client now, is that...
That's the second part of the question, is what is a client
what
an agency? So it's,
what a client say to an agency? Okay.
I want agency to client and then client to agency.
Client to agency.
Yeah, let's start there.
I'll tell you why this is a difficult question and why it's hard to answer this way, because I always feel like there needs to be like a synergy approach versus the one or the other. And this is, and what I mean by that is that you need to have a proper relationship where it feels equal, right? Where the agency does not feel fearful, okay? They don't feel, and nor does the client should not feel like they are dictating things to me because I'm worried about losing the account. And we should all assume that everyone is trying to do the best, for the business. And I would say, don't assume as an agency that you know more about the client's business than they do. And often, a lot of the time, it's because you don't have sufficient information. And that could be the fault of the client, because the client hasn't given you all the context that is behind the decisions that they are making. because you are not fully involved in the process. And things change all the time. And I think if we were to be, and I think this is what I love about who I am right now, is that we involve, we don't even call them an agency, but we involved, our creative partner. Like when we come up with the business solution already, they are in the room. When it's okay, guys, this was a business, this is what we've decided to do. What do you guys think? Okay, we debate it, we discuss it, bounce ideas. Okay, that makes sense. Yes, oh, great. And this is about, okay, we've decided that we're going to launch 5G. That's what we're going to do. Okay, oh, really? Okay, what about, how does 5G work? What does it do? And this is before we haven't even given them a brief about it. They just know that there's 5G. And so if the agents, if they are part of the business itself, you don't have, and this is a crazy thing, right? I don't know when last I wrote a brief, because they are in the room.
Ah, nice.
Okay. So, and they understand what we're trying to achieve, what we're going to do. And there is like an everyday discussions, debates. And because we're a startup and things has changed, like almost when things change, they know them as they change. So they don't come up with ideas and then like 2 weeks later, they're presenting to the client. It's like, no, that doesn't work. What did guys? Because I didn't communicate. I haven't been talking to you for 2 weeks.
Khaya, that's a future. Quick question, just to jump on that. How likely are you, or how willing are you as client at Rain, for example, to have the creative people solve that business problem with you? The business problem.
It's very.
I think that's important. Comms problem, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's important, and I think that's why we do it. And
you're open to it.
So, yes, I think that's the only way to do it. It's the only way it can work well, and to have this relationship where I am not like imposing what I think I want from you, but because you have such a deep understanding of the problems from the beginning that you know what routes not to go right from the get-go when you start coming up with ideas. But now if you don't know, you will think you have these great solutions and great ideas, but we thought about those things, like we thought about them already, but you're never in the room.
Yeah, exactly.
And we just didn't walk you. We didn't walk you along. And that for me is the biggest weakness in the current, not just agency model, but in the marketing departments. There's this separation. But whereas actually the model has not evolved, and everybody knows that the model is broken and it hasn't evolved. And also that these hierarchies that happen where it's like, okay, this person has to approve first, and then the other person, and the idea is presented to someone else who was not in the room, and then they don't like the idea because they're not in the room when the thing was being briefed. And it's not the creatives who are presenting. But at the same time, for me, if an idea has to be, I hate it when an idea is being overly explained to me. The idea should explain itself to me. Yeah. So, because I know what my brief is. I know what I sent you, and I know what the strategy is. And give me the strategy in as brief, as short as possible. Don't sell me, like literally, I actually get so frustrated and I'm like, but yes, okay, I know this, but why are we laboring this issue? But it's a personal thing, so I wouldn't say it's a client thing. It's cool. My own personal thing.
And this is a conversation that Ahmed and I have been having quite a bit. The different silos, and how we adhere to our silo as, say, creative people. For me, I've always had a problem with this us and them thing that happens, especially in agencies, and taking it in-house. So not so much between agency and client, but creative and account management, for example. There's already a weird tension there, and a lack of respect between the two, which I've always found quite weird, and Ahmed, he's been trying to change things quite a bit and creating these models where just within creative departments is to take away titles, because I think titles hold people back. So if it says art director on your business card, you have this one-track mind that this is all you do. I've never believed that because you're an art director, you have no idea how to write, or because you are a writer, you have no idea how to put together a good visual. You may not be able to do the software. You can guide somebody to do that. So Ahmed's thing has always just been, I don't want to work with an art director, an illustrator, or a designer. I want to work with creative people. Let's get all of these people in one room. I hate this idea that we come up with this bit and then you throw it to the designer now to solve another piece of the puzzle. But he's never been a part of the bigger picture,
Which, if I can jump in, is exactly, Khaya, I think you nailed it. Eh?
Yeah.
That's exactly what every agency keeps saying. Oh, our clients, our partners, and clients saying it, but not actually behaving it.
I'm so tired of hearing that.
Yeah, exactly. And what you just spoke about is exactly what everybody should be doing once, and that is just to have people in a room to solve a problem. Yeah. And once you do that, it's amazing. I mean, I think your approach is 100% the future.
Yeah, you know, I wish I would say it was my approach, you know, because it was. Because I think the founder, you know, of Rain, a guy called Brendan Lee, one of the co-founders, and he is a very firm. He's almost like not anti-establishment, but he always questions how things are done. But why is certain things done this way? And then you kind of and you think, so when someone founds like a big tech company like this, it's because there is a reason why they found the thing that they found in the first place, right? There's something they found that doesn't work. And therefore that means everything else should not work like it always works, and that goes into the marketing, that goes into how you work with your partners, treat them with respect. And I've adopted that, and I'm such a firm believer in it now that I almost wish every single organization was able to do what we're doing.
Fantastic.
Well done.
Ahmed, correct me if I'm wrong. This first question, NL Mhlongo, I think Khaya has pretty much answered a lot
I think
of
so.
that.
I think we should go to
Andile's question. Cool. Andile has pulled out a blast from the past year, Khaya. Tell us a bit more about your YouTube history. Do you think YouTube and other platforms or other video platforms are ever going to be more relevant than TV in South Africa? That's a very good question.
Well, the thing is, I think the big mistake sometimes we make is to say something is more relevant than another. And the problem is every single platform provides a certain solution. And it's not because it's more relevant or less relevant than another. It's just more relevant in a certain environment, in a certain situation. YouTube is relevant because these days we walk around here, but if it's still every day, at the end of the day, it's still the content, right? It doesn't matter whether it's TV, whether it's radio or TV. If the content is attractive enough and relative, and I don't care what platform it's on, I will go and check it out. There's HBO, there is Netflix, there is it's actually TV, but it's TV that's taken, on another form. So and it's, at the end of the day, it's all about creativity and what I get out of it. So I watch series because it's a great series. I don't watch because it's on TV or somewhere else. Is it a great series? Where is it? Okay, I'll go and watch it where it is.
I also feel that because I always, this kind of question it's always in the back of my mind. I like to create a lot of content online, and you got to kind of choose which platform is this suited for. And I think that's where the creativity comes in. If you've got this idea and you've got this thing packaged, I think you have to sit and figure out who it is that you want to see this. You got to understand that market that's going to be consuming it. Do you want them to see it on Instagram as a very short form video where they see it, they share it, it moves on, the next day they've forgotten about it? Or is this the kind of thing that you want to be seeded long term, where it's constantly playing during generations, for example, appealing to a very specific market who are going to be sitting there during that time? So I think it really just comes down to, like you were saying, nothing is more relevant than anything else. It's really about what you're doing with that medium and why you've chosen to go there. Personally, I think.
No, I agree. I completely agree with that. Yeah.
Cool. We've got an anonymous attendee who says, how do you drive positive sentiment around the brand when the product is bad?
Ooh, everything's frozen.
You can't. Sorry, I'm frozen. Who's
Are you
frozen?
back?
Yeah, it was.
No,
Frozen for a
I'm
bit.
here. I'm here. Oh, okay.
back.
Zoom is a bad product. How do we drive positive sentiment around it?
No, you know what? You can't. And this is the thing. And for me, I always say that branding is the product, is the business, is the company itself. So it is unfair for any client to say that drive positive sentiment when the product is bad. It's unfair, and it's impractical, and it's lazy. In order to drive good positive sentiment, you need to go back to the drawing room and find out what the issue is with your product itself and fix the product, and not try to get advertising to fix it, because advertising is a band-aid. It doesn't, and like unfortunately, like I say, where I work, if there's an issue, we never say advertising must fix the issue. It's never advertising. We go back and say, okay, is the pricing wrong? Do we need to fix the price? Or is the product wrong? Do we need to fix the product? Or is how we're explaining the product not understandable? Let's try and fix how we explain it. And not try and go, so, yo, guys, okay, we've got such a terrible sentiment around our product, then let's make a great ad. It's not going to fix it. Like, every single part of the value chain has to be involved in order to, to fix, terrible sentiment. If you're looking at, I'm trying to think of Old Spice. So if you think about Old Spice, the brand was dying. It was seen as, a thing for old people, but the product was still good, right? And it just lost relevance. It's not because it was a bad product. It just lost relevance. And what they did was like, okay, it's dying. We're desperate. We're gonna fix it. Whatever needs to be done, we'll do. And then that was okay. We'll do whatever needs to be done in order to, if it doesn't work, then it's dead. And that's what they did. Everybody within the food the value chain made sure this is from the client, from the factory, maybe a slight tweaking of the packaging, introducing other parts, other things, to the Old Spice brand, and like body wash and not just underarm sprays and all of those things. And that kind of creates like a bit of a reason, for people to have a positive sentiment towards a brand. But like I worked on a beer brand, and that was hard because it was not a particularly, I wouldn't say it was a particularly great product, and you had to try and force it as like a sledgehammer trying to fix something in this that just was not working, because you're not selling something that people actually want. And so what ended up, you end up having to fight like a price war, and that's how you end up getting up growth, not because people love the product. And then you have to innovate, like innovation. So innovation can help, but advertising is not going to help you get out of a bad product.
Yeah, they say the quickest way to kill a bad product is with good advertising, right? That's the cliche.
I love that you use the Old Spice example. I think that you couldn't have nailed it, with another example. That was just, what I love about Old Spice? I was chatting to Snooze the other day about it, and he was saying, don't you find it weird that as much as I don't use Old Spice, it's always top of mind. When I see Old Spice packaging in the store, true. I replay the entire campaign in my head, and I just keep going, how do they do this? Because I would never ever have thought that this brand would have, they would have been able to resuscitate it. But it's unbelievable, and that they still, even today, are still making relevant viral content and still making people talk about it. It's unbelievable.
That's incredible. I mean, I think for me, they're amazing. But also there's Musica. Remember Musica, it is not necessarily a bad product. It's just that people didn't think to go and buy their CDs from there.
Yeah.
And then I think Ahmed was there, and then they literally turned it around by making this. Remember the deaf
Yes.
girl thing.
Listen
And
with your
apparently
soul.
listen to the song. They're gonna shut it down. The product wasn't bad. It's just that people didn't know about it and didn't care to go and buy the music from there. And then
Amazing.
they just touched people's souls, and then it became this incredible thing.
Amazing. Last question there, I think. I don't know if we've got more time, but I'll ask the question anyway from anonymous attendee. I think it's nice. It's nice because it's quite a brave question. How do you suggest agency deal with clients that are a detriment to their own brand in terms of lack of knowledge and lack of urgency to action things, share feedback, etc.?
Well, I think in issues like that, it's usually internal issues within the particular marketing department. So it's internal issues in the company, and then somehow you get involved because maybe there is maybe it's a leadership issue, maybe there are decisions that aren't being made, or people are afraid of making decisions that they should be making, and then somehow you become like an innocent bystander as an agency. And I think that happens a lot, where or people are very scared of making decisions. I remember there was a place where I worked where a person was heading up like a part of a business, and this person never made any decisions. I mean, I was like a junior to them, and they would often defer decisions to me, so that if something went wrong, they would not be blamed, And then I took up on myself, like, actually, not, I will do it. I will make the decisions. I will make the calls. If something screwed up, I will actually say, yes, it was me. And I will write it on an email and say, this is a decision that I'm going to make. Because a decision has to be made, But and let me tell you, right, in order for great work to be produced, the stars have to align. And this means the client has to be great, there has to be great, brave, willing to move fast. And then on the other hand, the agency, you have to work well with them, gel, and it's got to be consistent. And this is how you know if it's a mistake. If it's like, a client makes one good ad and once every like 5 years, that's a fluke. It's not because of a great client. It's just that there was a fluke that happened. And then for years after that, they'll keep referring to that great ad that they did 10 years ago. But they're not brave enough to do something. They will always say want something like this, but they'll never be brave enough to actually make the effort to make sure that it happens. So to answer your question, it's usually internal politics more than anything else. And that has nothing to do with the agency, unfortunately. And because of the current power dynamics, you as an agency, I suppose you can't go to them and say, guys, you need to fix your issues or else. But maybe that is a good thing to do, where you say, actually, guys, I think you need to fix yourselves, or we're walking out the door. Yes, we need the business, but you're not helping us at all. And it's impacting, our staff, and they're demoralized, and they can't produce great work because you're taking too long to make decisions. And when you make decisions, you water down every single thing, and then you blame us when things don't work.
So Khaya, how do you define a great client?
How do I define a great client? As someone who actually has conversations with the agency all the time, and where I have it's an actual partnership where you go and talk to the strategist, have a conversation with the strategist, where the strategist can call me and have a conversation with me about what they're working on. Not like, oh no, the strategist can't talk to me because the client service must first make it happen and organize, and then once, if you remove all that hierarchy, and I can talk directly to the creatives, I can talk directly to the strategist, and we have a discussion, and the assumption, I think, on everybody's end is that everyone is trying to do their best they can, and that no one is trying to ruin like a great thing. Where I don't think that I have all of the answers, and where you as agency don't think that you have all of the answers, and where we are trying to make something great together. What's a real partnership? And and I think it's a match of like mutual respect. And again, where I share as much information as I possibly can with you as my agency, like all the time, and you just know what is happening. And I think what makes when agencies is in the dark and then they come and present, and then you make them look like idiots because they didn't share information, then like I think that makes a really bad client. Ego. And I think for me, what makes a bad client are those clients who want to show that I'm powerful. I'm the one who calls the shots. I'm the one who signs. In fact, I can bond this idea if I want, because I'm the client.
Well, it goes two ways. I think it's on both sides. I think agencies are often accused of having the ego. I think clients are accused of or have the power because they have the checkbook. But I think you're right. The ego works on both sides. So I have one final question. I know I've gone over, but my final question is: what are clients looking for in agencies? Is this?
I think it's. Sorry.
I think you've kind of answered in bits and pieces, but like I think there's a fundamental shift over the last 8 months, 6 months, but even the last 5 years. There's been a constant sort of discussion around, is the agency dead? What's the future? But I think things have changed, and I just love to hear your perspective on what you think clients are looking for from agencies or as a term.
It's a nice way to wrap this up, actually.
Like I think this is, and it's going to sound like a cop out. I don't think that clients know what they want from agencies. Nor do I think that agencies know what they think clients should be like, because everyone is still wrapped in this system, and that works. And I think where the bottom line, yes, the bottom line is very, very important, where it's about sustaining. So the current model, where there is a junior AE, an AE, a traffic, all these hierarchies. So I think for me, if it's about producing solutions, so it's about the solutions versus sustaining, the hierarchies within the organization. Because that's a mistake that I think a lot of agencies, and understand, you've got to feed the beast. That's the need to feed the beast, because you've got to pay the salary of the AE, the junior AE, the business unit director, and the MD, and the chief creative officer, and all of this. It's all it's the fee, becomes more important than the solution. And I think for me, that is a big problem with the agencies right now, as opposed to, you will get, I think if you solve the issues and you solve the problems together, the big fee will come. But that is not how we see it. That's not how people see it. Like what the new business model will be, I don't know what it's like, but ours really works for us really, really well. How it
That's
is.
great.
And it just works because we are, like I walk across the road before Corona. I walk right across the road. Tom, we have a discussion. That if there's something, they have a question, they walk across and have a discussion with me, and things happen and move like this. And I think also because we have maybe in some ways, the luxury of being a startup, where there's still lots of excitement, and I just hope that never dies and that never ends.
Great answer, man.
Excellent answer. Khaya Dlanga, thank you so much for joining us, brother. I really love what you said about how clients keep harping on about that one great campaign or ad that they did. Ahmed Tilly does that all the time. I've seen Ahmed introduce himself to people. Ahmed Tilly, I worked on the Musica thing. You might have seen.
I'm still piggybacking on all the stuff Khaya and Spike did for me.
No. What it is, like this, and I think one other thing, which I always want to stress and I want to make, is that I also, I have been very, very fortunate in the kinds of people that I've worked with. So, and because of who they have been, and having allowed me, like I was saying, about Ahmed, who was instrumental in my success as well, where I was doubting the idea. And then it's like, no, this is a great idea. Let's go ahead and do it. And another thing is to also, and I thought it's important, like the question that questions we never really ask is our failures, what we did badly, what was horrible. And as you know, when you become a successful creative, a successful marketeer, and all of a sudden everybody who is coming after you thinks that you are always some kind of rock star, which is not true, you know. And for me, I always talk about like my last role, you know, when I was at Heineken. For me, that I just did not fit with the environment. You know, I did not fit the environment. I was not able to create the kind of work I was able to create. And it's got nothing to do with, you know, with the fact that it was, you know, Heineken, or it's just that we were not working. It was just not working. And I was not able to be the kind of creative, the marketer that I was. And I never felt like I was myself. And I think it's important to acknowledge that early when you see that in yourself, and to say, listen, I don't think that this is my vibe, and I don't think that this is the environment that I should be in, because I don't fit in, and therefore I need to be brave enough to step out. And because the longer you stay in a place where you feel like you're not fitting in, your confidence starts eating, you know, and then you start doubting yourself, and then you hate the job, you hate the people you work with, and you ruin your career as a result. Oh. And I think we've got those are other conversations we should probably have about what are the great mistakes that you had, and what you have learned from them, and we don't talk about the mistakes enough.
Absolutely. I think this is like a whole new session on its own. Maybe we can make it happen. We'll chat to the Luris, we'll chat to Brand South Africa. I think it's very important to talk about that kind of stuff. I'm a big fan of unpacking the process. You're absolutely right. I think too often we get caught up in the end result. We see somebody up there winning all the awards, but I think it's more important to figure out where this person came from and how they got. You're right. We don't talk about that enough, which is imperative. And a lot of the questions that have been asked here, I think secretly a lot of people, that's what they actually want to know. You know, how did you do it? You know, how did you get to this point? So yeah, hopefully we can make it happen. But dude, thank you so much for your time. I know that you're incredibly busy. We really, really do appreciate it. You know, this was so important. I think you unpacked so many great things here. You know, hopefully you've inspired a lot of people. And yeah, let's see. Maybe that Twitter thing that somebody mentioned earlier on will actually come to fruition. Let's see. I might push Khaya. I might push Khaya to actually do this. But thank you so much. This has been the 4th episode of Final Approval. Ahmed, always a pleasure, brother. Thank you, for the important and pertinent questions. Don't you find that, Khaya, before I let you go, Ahmed is like, every time we bring somebody on here, they always go, you know, it was Ahmed. I think Ahmed is actually the key in advertising in South Africa.
All I've done is just invited people I've worked with, so they'll all say, you know what, it's Ahmed.
That's what I'm starting to see here, because I was like, why do they all keep going? No, it was actually Ahmed that made me who I am.
I'm being sneaky. Can I quickly say thank you, Khaya? I really appreciate your time. It's been amazing just to hear you. I wish we could. Yeah, we need to have that coffee when we can fly to Cape Town or vice versa.
Yeah.
And thanks for your wisdom and your experience, and mostly thanks for the generosity of sharing your experiences with people. You've done it through your books, you do it through your podcast, you do it online in social, whatever. So we really appreciate that. I think the mentorship thing that I kind of put you on the spot on is you have a lot to share, and there are a lot of people who want it. So please, like you know, you've got all this information.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear more of it. We all learn from it.
No, I just want to thank, you know, you, Ahmed, as I think you've been very instrumental in how, you know, I've turned out to be. And actually, you are the first person who said something very interesting to me. You said, you know, that's amazing, the things, and I wasn't aware about this thing. It says, everything you do, you tend to, you know, do pretty decently. You started the YouTube channel, it blew up, you know, this was back in the day. And then you advertising, did pretty decently at that. You went to the market, I hope you did pretty, you know, decently. You wrote books, you know, and I was like, oh wow, Flip, that is amazing. I never thought of it that way, which is you being generous. It's a generosity again to recognize something like that and say something like that, you know, about you know,
Okay.
thank you. And then
You should go to the casino. You should go to the casino. Go now.
Yes, yes.
Thanks, Kai. I appreciate your words,
Donovan,
man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And thank you for always
Thanks, Tony.
being like, you know, like those conversations we always have when we run into each other and it's noisy and we're here and we're just talking, having these most serious conversations and amongst the noise. And then you being saying, dude, can you design my book cover? And like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And then it's the best. To this day, I don't think that in the last, I don't know how many years, I've seen a better book cover. And I'm not being biased. Yeah.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Guys, thank you
you.
so much. Next week, we have Coconut Kells on the show talking about a different side of creativity and media. I think that's going to be very, very interesting. This has been Final Approval. My name is Donovan Goliath. Ahmed Tilly, always a pleasure. Khaya Dlanga, you've been amazing.
Cheers.
Take care. Enjoy.
Cheers.
Cheers,
Thank you.
guys.
Cheers. Bye.